It's my perspective. Yeah, from my perspective. It's my perspective. Yeah, yo, am I wrong or is it just you? Or did my life show me some things that gave me my view? And if I went through what you went through, would I be you? I don't know. That's too many questions with no answer, but plenty chances for many lessons. Am I willing to learn that it's all perception? That the picture that I paint ain't the one that you sketching? So can we disagree without drawing a weapon? Long as I can understand that it's just your perspective. Yeah, it's my perspective. Yeah, from my perspective.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to My Perspective Friday. I'm here with the awesome Hunter, the great Larry, and the amazing Fook. How's everybody doing today?
Doing great.
We had a good week.
Oh yeah.
I had a good week.
You can smile through it.
Okay, you said you could smile through it.
Mhm.
Hey, look, we gotta smile a lot. You only live once, right? Unless you are from certain religions, but you only live once. Today, I know the Friday crew, we usually do the fun topics. Every now and then, we do some heavy hitting topics or some topics that are really important. And today, we're going to talk about Uvalde. And what we're going to talk about is, from all of our perspective, how we feel about the police response and the things that happen, whether in a positive way or a negative way. We're just going to come at the angles of what we want to talk about and let that happen organically. We're not going to focus on the shooting and what happened in the classrooms. That's an even heavier topic, and we don't want to relive that. But we just want to talk about the response and how we think things should have went and where we think things should go from here. I know this is a hot button topic for you, Larry. You want to get us started?
Yes, it is a hot button. Personally, I think that we say jerk off of a chief that was in charge of the SROs that responded there. I believe this guy needs to be prosecuted for being complicit in murder.
Mm-hmm.
I think his lack of response and apparently not letting the other officers respond, I think he's complicit. He is an accessory to what took place there. Now, I understand that they suspended him, a couple of weeks ago, I believe, but it shouldn't stop there. Now, even though there's been a lot of misinformation come out, from the police and from the state, they've changed their story several times. But one thing that's been consistent is this person, and honestly, I don't know his name, but he was the chief of the SROs for the district. Now, he claims that he wasn't in charge. He wasn't the commander on scene. So therefore, he was there without a radio, had no way to stay in contact with anybody, and which is insane to me.
That is insane, because even if you're not the commander on scene, if you're working with a majority of your office there and you have the power that you have, you would be in the loop, right?
You would think.
That would be the first thing you would demand, is to be in the loop.
Yeah,
Well,
it would make sense like that he might not be the one in charge of the situation, because the highest ranking officer to reach the situation first in those situations is the person who ultimately takes over and is in charge, but he's the chief of police. Once he gets there, he's still going to have power over that other person. He's going to be able to at least talk in their ear, if not take the mic away from them.
There you go. And if he wasn't in charge, why was he the one waiting to get a key that was never needed because the door wasn't locked? And
Also,
why
if
was
they had tactical teams, they don't need a key.
well,
You know what?
he was waiting for a key, but it was proven that the door didn't function properly and therefore could not be locked, and that the school actually had a work order in to get the lock repaired on that door, but they never ever looked at it, never checked.
This is why it's, and Fook, you can agree with this. This is why, we've talked about this, whether we're talking about the Amber Heard situation, the Monique situation, all the relationship situations. Every time we have an episode, it seems like we get to this part of, Just be honest. Because when you
Mhm.
tell all these lies, they come out, and then you've got to keep backpedaling, and you've got to remember every lie that you told. Uh, how do you feel about the honesty that was not utilized throughout this process? Food.
Who's that to?
I was talking to Food.
Um,
She hear us?
oh,
No.
you saying like the police was dishonest or the school was dishonest?
No. We're focusing on the police. The stories that have come out when they've given answers, and then the answers have been proven to be false answers, and it's just making the situation worse.
Oh, well, I don't really expect much from the police, to be honest. I don't expect them to do good. They don't do good to me.
Well,
Um,
I don't know. I know where you're coming from, but I have come to a point in my life where I don't like doing the sweeping generalizations, because growing up as a black man in Miami, I can tell you 100 stories where policemen did me wrong, but I can also tell you 100 stories where a policeman kept my butt out of trouble or saved my life or did something for me. So I think what happens, just like with
I can't say
any,
the
huh? I don't know. I'm saying that's what I'm saying. I'm speaking from my experience.
yeah.
Everybody has a different experience. I've had friends that have told me, well, if you just, when you get pulled over, if you just do everything they tell you, everything goes great. I'm like, that's your experience. So you have to explain to people like your experience. I had a cop, Ray Har, in Miami, that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here, because that guy kept me, he would chase us to school. When he saw us skipping at the mall, he would come and find us and be like, "What are you doing here? Get your butts back in school." And he was just always on us, and it helped me so greatly. But then again, I have those horror stories. The thing that I'm upset about, Larry, is the story about the officer who has a wife and child in the school, and
Mhm.
he's trying to go in, and they detain him and take his gun.
Well, yeah, no, that's outrageous. They did the same thing with a mother outside the school that wanted to get in. They detained her and put her in the trailer they had out there.
Well, I mean,
Now,
I could get a mother because she doesn't have any way to defend herself once she gets in there, but a police officer is trained for that situation.
Well,
but still,
I
a,
understand.
mo- a mother, when they're seeing that a lot of people are just standing around outside, and they were, because you watch the live videos when it was going on,
Yeah.
they were doing nothing. And
Mhm.
finally, as a parent, I don't know if you're a parent or not, but
Mhm.
as a parent, you're going to do everything you can to protect your kids. Just like that cop you were talking about. He had his wife and daughter were in there.
Yeah, the
Now,
thing that
I
bothers me the most is like I wonder. I don't know the full situation about around him being detained, but I imagine that he
well, we
tried to
just told
go in
we just told
by
you that.
himself. He tried to go in
Yes,
alone potentially.
yes, because he wanted to get his
But I have a friend of mine. Yeah, I have a friend who actually just went through law enforcement training, and when they are taught the school shooter situations, they're taught how to do it on their own
hmm
first. That's the first thing they learn, how to go through the school entirely on their own. So they've had that training. So I still don't understand why they would have stopped them for that.
well, they claim that they've had this training since Columbine. You're
hmm
talking what, 20 years ago?
hmm
However
Mhm.
long ago that was. And these
hmm
people are trained. And here you got a guy that wants to get in there, trying to get in there, take care of his family. You have, excuse me, you have somebody else that's holding people back for no reason whatsoever. And I could certainly expect this police officer to break the chain of command
hmm
and do what he needs to do instead of listening to this jerk.
Well, I can see. I'm with you on the officer one. The mom one, I get it, but I understand it. You
Yeah,
can't
I mean,
have
she's
civilians.
almost definitely going to end up
You
getting
can't.
killed if she
You
wins.
can't have civilians, and I get it. No, I'm not blaming her for doing what she did.
No.
Like you just said, Larry, as a parent, you do. It's your job to do whatever you can to keep your kids safe,
That's
right?
right.
So
That's
I
right.
agree with, but I also agree with them stopping her, because you can't. And this is me coming from a military standpoint of doing riot control and all kinds of other things. You can't just have civilians running into battle, and running into schools where there's shooters. So as much as that's why I don't blame her, but I can't really get on them from stopping her. But focusing just on them, when I'm watching that video, I do see, and not everybody, because again, I don't like to paint a broad a stroke, because we know it's bad people that have been allowed to do things in police precincts and on the police force that overshadow all the good that the other ones are doing. You know,
Yeah, because I mean, I know like there's
you know, that beat cop who's screwing up.
reports like they're on.
Yeah, your internet was breaking up, so I don't think you heard me. But like, you know, you get harassed by a regular cop, but does that count the same? You got cops doing homicide, cops doing all types armed robbery. There's a bunch of different units and a bunch of cops doing different things. But anywho, I saw some people who were scared and intimidated and hesitant to go in. And that was the part that angered me, because as a former military person, I always tell people this. If there are certain jobs in this country that the other person's life is more important than yours. And what I mean by more important is it's their life is supposed to be held in a high regard for yours, because that's the capacity of your work. Whether that's military, don't join the military, don't be a policeman, don't be a fireman, don't be a doctor, if you don't hold the other person's life higher than yours.
Now, here's the situation where this guy, I realized that it wasn't I want to say the regular police force he was a chief of. He was a chief of the SROs. Mm-hmm. Now, although they are police, either way, you know, if you're going to be in a career that long to where you can advance to chief of whatever organization it is, mm-hmm. and then you're going to be so cowardly that you are not going to do anything when you hear what's going on in the building, and still do nothing about it. And you're working your whole career at a job just to be able to respond to something like that. Mm-hmm. Just like the guy down at Parkland, mm-hmm. who kept himself outside the building door. Now, although he was there by himself at the time, but he didn't even bother to try. Now, he lost his job because of it. Mm-hmm. And this guy, go ahead.
No, something, because I didn't want to lose sight of it. Something you said earlier, you were talking about the door and how they were waiting on a key for a door that was already unlocked. But then it also is found out they had a device to get into the door, whether it was locked or not.
That's right.
That's what I was saying. Like, if you have a tactical team with the right equipment, mm-hmm. you don't need a key. You have a key for all doors.
I've been in a house where the door got kicked in by police. They didn't wait on no key. Look at folks, she knows what I'm talking about. They didn't wait on and we were just having a house party. They didn't wait on a key.
They don't ask.
Now, granted, the school door is probably a little tougher because it's a fire door. So you're going to get an actual tool, but you're not going to be able to kick it.
Besides that, these doors opened out. They didn't open in. Yeah. And believe me, I'm not defending them for not doing it, because I think it's criminal. But mm-hmm. they did open out, which would make it harder to kick in. But they did have a tool to pry it open.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they did have a tool to pry. My bigger point was no one waits for a key when they want to kick in my door.
Well, you got one of my kids in there. We're not waiting for a key.
Mm-hmm. And that was the thing, is that I remember there were reports. They were all anonymous because none of these officers wanted to get in trouble from the department. But like reports from the people that were on the tactical teams that went in and eventually got into the classroom, and they were saying that they were, and also people that heard the radio transmission, they were saying that these guys were begging for them to let them go in because they were right there around the corner just waiting.
Yeah, that's why I was saying I can't say everybody, because we're watching the videos and I see the people who are waiting, and we know how those situations play out where, when you're in these systems that have hierarchies it's like one of those things. You don't follow orders and it turns out worse, you're held accountable. Mm-hmm. If you do follow orders and it turns out bad, you're still held accountable. You just have to play, and you just have to decide which one's going to take a heavier toll. Mm-hmm. It wasn't everybody. And that's why I hate the whole suspended. Okay.
Well, that's standard protocol.
Yeah, and it's also a reaction. It's
Yeah.
also a reaction. They get this information before it's released to us. Okay. I feel like things happen once we react. Why are you waiting for the public to react when you already know what you should be doing when you are provided that information?
Well, I think most of the early misinformation came out from this chief,
Mhm.
covering his own butt. That's what it was. Everything he initially said protected him. And then all this other stuff came out. When you figure this guy should be smart enough to know that there's video in that school,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
just
I know
can't
almost
believe.
every school across the country now has cameras.
Sure. And I can't understand how somebody that's apparently this ignorant got to be to the position he was in.
Well, I mean,
Political.
Larry.
yeah, food. Me and her. It's like I know what she's about to turn in. Position. I mean, you've learned this in any job. How many times have you had a job and you've had someone over you, your manager, and you're like, this person's a complete idiot. How did they get here? We know in life it's not what you know all the time, it's who you know. We know people, just like in the military, we know people that can have really good records and knows how to do really good write-ups, and they'll get moved along, and you can have someone who's more stellar than them and they're just not as good as getting things written. So you can get to that position and not be the best of the crop of officers that you were with. But once you're there, everything that happens, if you're the boss, you get paid to take the blame. Why did things not happen the way they should have happened? The amount of time between each level of response, when you look at that time frame chart, is utterly ridiculous.
Well, yes, it is. And it gets worse and worse every time you look at it. I mean, in all honesty, it does. And this is the kind of thing. I mean, I support the police. I want to say totally support the police, but I do. But cases like this, and there's been a few others. Cases like this destroy every good thing the police department does.
Well, I'm gonna caveat that because
Larry,
in this,
you think the police need reform?
I don't know about reform. I think some things do need to change. Yes, I don't know if you were.
well, that's what reform is. I think sometimes
Yes.
when people hear it, they get
They think
they-
extreme. It's not. It doesn't have to be wiped through the whole thing.
Right.
It's changing
It's
certain
hard.
things throughout the department.
Right. It's hard for me to say I support the police, even though I do. What I don't support is, just like with any job, bad police. What I have liked, I don't like that George Floyd died, but what I have liked since that happens is you have a lot more cops over these years that have come out in trials and said, no, he did the wrong thing. When back in the day, that never happened. When good
I
cops saw
remember
bad cops do bad things, they had to keep their mouths shut.
Yeah, I remember like
and
last
now-
summer there was even a cop who like there was a cop that was not handling the situation properly, and another cop came up to him and took their gun away from him.
Yeah.
Just like pushed him out of the situation entirely. You have people
And
like
the police-
because the cops know they used to feel like, because my dad was a police officer for almost 30 years, and he said it would oftentimes feel like you had no control. If you did anything out of line, even if it was to protect more people, you felt like you were going to get in trouble for it. But now with the court of public opinion taking more power than the actual courts have, almost, these officers feel like they can really step in whenever they feel like they need to.
Right, because all it takes is one to two bad cops to ruin a precinct.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed who's been quiet over the last 2.5 years is the police union, because they used to open their mouth every time something happened, but now they've kind of been quiet and let these. I mean, I've seen so many cases on YouTube where it's like, did your partner do the right thing? And the cop's like, no, he did not. He did not have to do that. When you never used to hear that stuff, but now the good ones, because the good ones are tired of the bad ones. But
because it makes them look bad. Everybody's looking at them and hating on them, and putting them down in the dirt, and they didn't do anything wrong.
It's the same with me.
Like
I tell people all the time, it's the same with me. When people watch the news and they see soldiers treating detainees bad in jail cell, or the one in Afghanistan where those Marines were peeing on, dead Afghan bodies, that's a representation of me.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to go to these other countries too and walk around. And then so it's the same kind of thing with the police. You have knuckleheads who do really, really stupid shit, and then it makes everyone else look bad. So one thing they've got to do, we talked about this on Pedro's show, prison reform, is people like this police chief. He's not gonna be able to work again. But when you have cops doing the things that they do wrong, and they get fired, they get to move across the city or to another county, and then they become a police officer there. So you're kind of just moving them around instead of getting rid of them. You got to
Well, they
get.
do. There are special ways of getting rid of them where they can keep that from happening.
Yeah, but it's not happening. Like,
well,
it's not
because
happening like it should.
the issue is certain states you can't really just fire people. It has to be a resignation, and that's whenever the bad stuff they did before doesn't stick on the record, is whenever they resign.
But you know what, Hunter?
Resigning, losing an employee costs a lot of money.
Yeah,
So,
It does. Yeah.
They don't like doing that. Employers don't like doing that.
but we know that's in terms of paperwork. But Hunter, we know how this can work. Larry's the police chief in wherever in Florida, and I'm the police chief in the neighboring city. I get this guy named Thompson. I go through his record. He used to work. You act like I can't call Larry and said, "Hey, give me the skinny on Officer Hunter. Why did he leave your?" And Larry's going to tell me, well, he may not. Just depends. But Larry might be that kind of person that goes, yeah, he kind of kept smacking people around, and that's something we can't tolerate.
Unfortunately, it's illegal to pass information like that along.
It is, but you know what happens.
Well, sure, and it should. It should happen. Just like you're talking about, somebody does something, gets themselves fired, and they go right next door and get a job doing the same thing they were doing before. Now, that's wrong. Mm-hmm. And if you want to call that, say, part of police reform, you're in a profession where what you do is critical to everybody. Mm-hmm. You're talking, without getting corny about that, you're talking life and death.
Yeah, you are, because when something happens, somebody robs my apartment, who do I have to call? I've got to call the police. And again, I'm speaking as a oh, Larry.
Hey, sorry about that. I forgot to turn the ringer off.
That was a throwback. I'm about to whoop somebody's ass. Okay, Larry. I hope you didn't chime that because I started talking. But I'm gonna tell you, and some people are gonna roll their eyes, and some people watching this are gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. As a black man growing up in America, I try to limit my interactions with the police. But when something happens and I have to call the police, I'm thinking about this the entire time that they're on the way of, okay, what kind of cop am I getting? What do I do if this happens? That's not something a civilian's supposed to be having to think about, And some people who don't have to think that way, some of them understand it and some people don't understand. It's like, well, what do you mean? Why are you thinking like that? It's because it's based on my experience, It's my experience.
It's unfortunate that happened.
I feel like the police, in my experience, I feel like never don't take my situation seriously. Mm-hmm. I'll report an issue and it wouldn't be taken seriously. I'm just like, why is it not serious to you? It's because no one's dead,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they're supposed to be protective and law enforcers, not violence perpetrators or abusers or micromanagers, because they're like on every block sometimes.
Right. And Fook, and everybody who's listening, I'm going to explain something to you. Fook, I can tell you don't like the police. That's You don't like the police. But I can tell it's not like you want to dislike the police. You were just given reasons to dislike them. And a lot of those reasons are what Larry, Hunter, and yourself and myself are talking about. It's
like
when
I'm not rowdy with the police.
no, I get it. But when you allow the bad apples to continue to do this type of stuff, that's how you get a citizen like Fook who does not like you or
Yeah,
one.
a lot of that, I think, from what I've heard from both my dad and other people in law enforcement, is that one of the biggest issues is the people. It's the people who oversee the police department in the towns and counties, the municipalities, the town committees, the even the governors. Like they're it's all political. They look down and they see numbers, they see votes, they see dollar signs on their budgets. They don't see the actual issues that are being reported to them by people on the ground. Because there was a guy at my dad's police department that almost half the department would submit complaints about him multiple times a year. And it took 4 or 5 years for them to finally get rid of him. It was because someone outside of the department caught him doing what he wasn't supposed to be doing, not because of all these reports from the other officers. They were trying to get him out, and the people up top wouldn't get rid of him.
Well, and a lot of that's got to do with these strong unions.
Well, there aren't unions here
for the police.
No, the unions aren't allowed in North Carolina.
Oh, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. See, I completely support that.
Well, I feel like every kind of service has its place. I feel like a union has, because again, just like we're talking with police, there's 1,000 union stories of where a union greatly helps someone, and there's 1,000 union stories where if the union got out of the way, certain bad stuff wouldn't have happened. And that's just life. But like Larry was saying, we shouldn't be rolling a dice when it comes to life. Right? There shouldn't be a dice roll involved with that. That's part of the problem. And when I'm watching that video of Uvalde, what Hunter was saying about people wanting to go in, I can watch that video and I can see on faces who wanted to go and who was just fine with waiting for orders. You can see it.
Oh, you can tell who's focused and who isn't.
Yeah.
No. And I mean, I just can't believe, again, that you would get a position like that and not be willing to do your job. And if you don't like that job, then you need to get out and quit destroying the police all over the country. Here's the thing.
Who's the thing? You said doing your job. He ain't got to go in. He's got a bunch of people. He can sit there. He ain't got to go nowhere. He can sit behind the car and get the orders.
And without a radio. I
don't understand how you're in that much authority and you're in that kind of critical situation and you're not in the loop. What sense does that make?
And that's the other thing. Like I said before, once this started, there's already someone there controlling the situation, like giving orders and everything to all the other officers. If you don't feel like you're in the loop as the police chief, I don't care if you're the chief. Let them do it. They know what's going on. Yeah. Wait until you've gotten enough information before you start trying to take control.
Sure, get the hell out of the way and let somebody else do it.
Let them handle it. They know what's going on. You don't. Let them do it.
I think the biggest thing that the weight, and every life is precious. I feel like because it's also involving kids, the sense of urgency needs to be faster. I'm not saying that if it was someone shooting up a prison that they should take their time. I'm just saying when it comes to kids and elderly, I just feel like there should be a greater sense of urgency. And they're waiting for all the planets to align as you're continuing to hear gunfire, as you're continuing to hear people scream, and no one is moving. I want to take
that's not even and that's in the policy actually, is to be as urgent as possible. This guy wasn't doing what he was supposed to do, because that buddy of mine who just went through law enforcement training, he was saying part of the school shooting stuff, you learn that there's 2 teams. The people going after the shooter don't stop at all until they find him. Even if there is someone bleeding on the ground asking for help, they don't stop. The people behind them right around the corner are going to help that person. The people going after the shooter do not stop. it is as urgent as it gets. So I don't understand how you could have said no, don't go in.
And those listening, I'm just not sitting here blowing smoke and giving hot takes. I did 20 years in the Army. I've been deployed to Iraq twice. I've went to Bosnia in 1999. I'm saying you've got to have a certain mentality if you're going to hold these positions of military, police officer, fireman, doctor. The people that you have to say are trying to save are put above you. Your life is it sounds so bad, but that's the job that you signed up for. My life is expendable when it comes to saving an American citizen. Same thing with a police officer, same thing with the doctor, same thing with the fireman. Would you like a bunch of firemen to sit around outside as you burn to death in your house?
I wouldn't.
Right?
Oh.
So and I'm talking to the people who want to be in these careers. Think about that. If you're selfish and you know you're self-aware and you know you're selfish, don't be a police officer. Don't go and join the military. Don't be a doctor. Don't be I'm sure there's
if you're not trained in violence prevention, don't be a law enforcement, police, because you're supposed to prevent violence. You
can get now. Don't get me wrong. In the military and the police force, I know there's people that have gotten training, and they're way better for it, better than they were when they started. So, but you have to have some type of self-awareness. All the times that we've seen policemen too quick to go in or too quick to draw a weapon or running into the wrong house, guns ablazing. And now you have a situation where we're wanting you to do that and nothing's happening.
There's no excuse for it. None.
But what's going to happen, and this is the sad part, maybe it won't happen, but this is the sad part. That chief, I guarantee you he's going to get to retire. He's going to get his pension, and he's going to be just fine.
Well, I'll go back to what I said, is he ought to be charged and prosecuted. Oh.
Well, that's what we got to do. That's what we have to do to fix these. But the police force and the military, they mirror regular society. People think that we're better, or we are supposed to hold ourselves to higher standards if you're a police officer or you're military, but we're also a parallel to society. You have people in everyday jobs being pushed up and pushed along that don't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, I don't know this guy's police record. He could be Sylvester Stallone from Demolition Man, for all I know. He could be the greatest cop that ever lived. Maybe that's my fault for not digging too deep into it, but you know what? At this point, I really don't care, because every time we see one of a cop do something wrong, they dig up this history of all of these complaints and all these things. I need to go look up his history, because I want to know if there's any type of, like Fook was saying, she's dealt with cops that did not take her complaint seriously. I wonder if there's complaints like that in there. That's what we do now. When something happens, you got to take the microscope and you got to look and see. And the reason why we're having this discussion now, everyone, even though this happened, almost over a month ago, we here don't like for something to happen and then we just come out with a bunch of opinions, because that's what everybody does, right? They rush to do a show, give you a bunch of opinions, and then find out everything they said was wrong. So we like to get some of the factual information to start coming out so we can better talk about it. I think that's just the way. And this topic is brought up by Larry, by the way. I thank you for putting it on the list, Larry, because it is a topic. I know we talked a lot about policing in the community, but it all kind of ties together. It all kind of ties together. And this stuff is not new. Everyone acts like this is all new. The world's going to hell, all this. No, this stuff has been happening for so long. It's just now we all have cell phones. We have cameras everywhere. And now we can see the things that people were complaining about for so long. Mm-hmm. And it was always your word against mine. And the court's usually always going to take that cop's word if you don't have evidence. I showed kids.
Proper dialogue is important.
Huh?
I feel like proper dialogue is just important as concrete evidence. If
Mhm.
you don't know how to convey your stance, it's very hard for people to help you or agree with you.
Well, yeah, that is true too. And I know what you're saying, Fook. If for those of you who aren't getting it, when you're trying to have a conversation with someone and put in your viewpoint, especially if it's factual, but you're having a hard time conveying it to them, and they won't help you open up the correct dialogue because I hate when somebody responds to my fact with, well, in my opinion, that drives me crazy. That
Yeah,
drives
I
me
just
crazy.
I just read it.
We're not talking about
I
opinions
just
here.
I just read it. I just watched a TED talk about a bipartisan friendship, and they emphasize on dialogue to prevent emotion overruling reasoning. It's
Mhm.
interesting,
Well,
because people with completely different beliefs, they allow their differences to keep them apart, even
which
if
Yeah,
is
they
they'll start to
it's
think ideologically instead of realistically.
it's the
yeah.
saddest thing
Just
in the history of the world. Larry's 77 years old. Hunter's in his early
Wait,
20s.
75, 75.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Larry. I take that back.
You're still hip, Larry. Right.
Thank you. Thank
Wow.
you, Sue.
um, Jay says there's little that can counter facts, which is why a simple-minded person isn't good in a debate. Well, that's true, but you got to remember the people who don't have the facts are the ones who speak the loudest. You say 2 + 2 is 4, and somebody says, in my opinion, it's 5, and now you've got a full-on hour argument over something that shouldn't be an argument. You know what I'm saying? That's just the way it happened. But this stuff, again, these are all things that people can improve on. It's not like it's impossible. And what I was getting to before I said Larry's age wrong is Larry's from a different time and place. Hunter's from a different time and place than me. Fook is from a different time and place than all three of us. She's not a black male. Hunter's not a black male. I'm not a white male. We all have our own political thoughts. We all have our thoughts on guns. We all have thoughts on everything. But we sit here cordially and have a conversation like decent human beings, even though we may not agree on things. That's where we got to get.
That's called a discussion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
being
well,
able to
go ahead, Larry.
discuss things, or being able to discuss things like this is the way it should be.
Mhm.
You don't need to let politics get into things. It's what's right or wrong,
Mhm.
and you come to a compromise. And I don't believe there's any politician that's willing to compromise on anything. So that's another.
Well, I see. We're doing that the same thing that we do with the police, and
I like what Larry just said.
I get where you're coming from, but again, we're doing that thing where we have to realize in life. And I'm just speaking from me. It's my perspective. I hate when anybody says all police, all politicians, all lawyer, all men, all women, all black people, all white people, all this. But we don't get mad when it's not directed towards whatever group we're in. So there are people that say all white people are racist, and there are minorities that'll sit there and just go with it. There are people that says all black people are worthless, or all women should be in the kitchen, or all policemen are bad, or there's no politician who's trying to do anything good. And that's all impossible. I have personal friends who are politicians.
Stereotypes are going to be around.
They are going to be around, but there's difference when I use stereotypes to be funny and make jokes. I like fried chicken and watermelon to be funny, but we don't use the stereotypes if we don't change the behavior, nothing's going to change. We got to stop painting everybody with that same brush, because one person cheated on you. Is every relationship you're in that the next person going to cheat on you?
It's
a
lot of feeling.
I like grilled chicken and watermelon, but
You like grilled chicken? Well, no,
I like pineapple.
Oh,
I love pineapple and watermelon. I don't eat meat, so no chicken.
Oh, here we go. See, now we're gonna get into an argument. That's we'll disagree on police stuff, but we're really gonna get an argument on this. Damn, I don't eat meat. That's where we're gonna go. That's
Hey,
just do that in there. You know you're gonna do that.
it's a judge-free zone. Like
It
I
is
said.
a judgment zone. No, we're
Um,
always judging. We're always
Yeah.
we're always judging. But
I did prefer fried chicken over grilled.
oh yeah, I mean, well, I gotta have it at least once a
I
week.
mean-
I eat very healthy now. I walk to Cava once a week, once a day. Sorry, to eat. Today I ate there twice, but I mean a lot healthier. But I gotta have my fried chicken every now and then. It's just oh my god.
There's nothing like it.
I mean, it's just
See, when you get old enough, you got to go to grilled because it's a whole lot healthier.
well, that's the thing, Larry. I eat grilled chicken all week, so every once in a while I gotta get my fix. I'm not eating it all the time. I just every now and then I gotta get it. You know.
Well, see, I got to take meds for all that grease, so we got to be here. All right. Anyhow,
Wait, Gregory says I like doing the Arnold Meatless Mondays, but I can pound meat. You can pound meat. All right, that's TMI, Gregory. What you do on your own time is your own business. Okay, you know. I'm kidding, Gregory. I'm kidding. If you're still here, I'm kidding, Gregory. Well, let's talk about that a little bit because with this situation, like Larry said, in the first couple weeks, you get all these contradicting stories. It was hard to believe who's saying what, who's correct, what's right, and you had to wait almost a month to get most of the facts out. How do you guys feel about when situations happen and we rush to talk about it and don't have all the facts?
I don't like it.
It's the worst thing you could do
I'm a research
because everyone is going to believe everyone's going to when everyone's all hyped up, full of energy, full of adrenaline from the initial, punch of what just happened.
Yeah.
That's when they're most susceptible to whatever you're going to throw at them. And so giving them the wrong information at that time is the worst thing you can do. You sometimes, even though they aren't going to like it, sometimes you have to be honest and say, we don't have enough information to talk to you about this yet.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure.
Sometimes you just have to do that.
Yeah, you have to make sure your emotional intelligence is, there and present when you approach an uncomfortable conversation.
very good, Fook. Very good.
I love that.
I'm a research coordinator, so I make sure all my data is there before I.
See, I think a lot of the problems is that mainly, news organizations and things like that believe that the public has a right to know everything right away. And I don't agree with that.
No, you need time.
And I think there's a lot of things that you don't
need
necessarily have the right to know.
Secondary data. Yeah.
It used to be like that. You had your guy out there on the street getting the news, collecting it, getting all the facts, all the data. But now, because we live in a capitalist society, if you don't put it out when it's happening, you're behind. And
simply for human entertainment. Simply for human entertainment.
Yeah, but
it's all about ratings.
Yeah, so they're forced to do it. They're forced to do it because, hey, Hunter, if you don't cover it, Larry's going to cover it. And now everyone's looking at Larry. Everyone's clicking on Larry. All the ratings for Larry is going up. So here come the commercials. Here come the buy-ins. And now, Hunter, you got to get on it. We're losing money. We're losing the advertisement dollars. I
feel like now with the situations that we have going on, that is like they're playing the short game. Because if you really want to make a difference, and if you try hard enough and you really put all your energy into it, I honestly believe that a news outlet could, take their time and make sure that everything they say is on point and completely accurate, and end up getting a much bigger following in the long run.
Why would you do that when you can just have the faithful following you have and feed them what they want to hear?
Because I feel like a lot of people now, with how things have been going, are looking for something like that.
Yeah, the people in your circle. You got to remember, people who gravitate towards certain things, they have a disposition for that, right? They have a disposition for that. The only thing that hurts any type of organization is when people leave. It's not as much about new people coming. It's about who's leaving, right? Mm-hmm. So if I have a news station And I've got a steady stream of 5.2 million people viewing my content. Yeah, I want more people. I want more views. But as long as those people don't leave and they keep viewing, and I keep feeding them what they want, I'm fine. It's when they start leaving and now it drops to 3.2. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing. When you're hurting a business in their pockets, that's when the change happens. That's when you stop watching a station or you stop going to certain events. That's when the change happens. But as long as they can pack the room with the people who want to hear the stuff that they're going to regurgitate, that's why a lot of journalists have their own blogs now. A journalist works really hard. Some of these journalists are working on stories for a decade, 5 years.
Media is bad journalism. Right? You got to go to media is bad journalism. Like news on the TV, that's not where I go about current events. You got to check out them independent journalism.
Well, you got to watch them too. You got to watch everybody. You always do your own research because, again, we're painting that broad stroke because there's some news outlets who do the right thing and there's some independent journalists who do the wrong thing. But like Fluke was saying, she said she's a research coordinator. You got to stop being lazy and do your own research. You can tell when you talk to somebody about anything, whether it's political, we'll just say politics. You're talking to somebody about politics. You're talking to somebody about gun control. And when in the conversation, they're saying word for word something you just heard on TV. It's like, you can't form your own opinion. You're not even giving me your own words.
People don't have their own views. If you want to formulate your own views and opinions, you have to sort that out on your own. And like media that's easily accessible, I don't really care for secondary data. That's everywhere. That's like so easy. Primary data that takes actual direct interaction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, but that also,
and I don't really believe just because a blog or a news channel has a million views that they're correct.
No, that happened with CNN. CNN over the past decade was rated as the least trustworthy source to go to the news, and because of that, their new, I think it's either president or CEO, whatever, the guy in charge that's new. He just came in fairly recently. Has addressed that, and they are completely changing how they do things because
that goes back to that thing I was talking about. It's so crazy how everything revolves around each other. Larry's talking about a guy who's in a high position. How did he get there? You get complacent. The person that was in charge got complacent, let things slip, do what you want to do. You lost all that credibility you built up for 30 something years. And now this guy has to come clean house, dress it up, and get it back to the way it was. But I mean, I'm not going to hold it against him. If he turns things around, I'm not going to sit here being one of these people, fake news. No, if you're telling me the right stuff, but you got to do people are too lazy to do their own research. I didn't get my doctorates. I did go to school to try to get one. I stopped. I'm going to admit it was too much. But the one thing I did get out of it, I did a paper. And I had about 40 sources, and my professor said, you haven't exhausted your sources. I was like, what do you mean? I've got like 40 sources. So I went and got 30 more sources. She said, you didn't do an exhaustive search. I said, so I went and got about 20 more. And she's like, you didn't do an exhaustive search. And I'm like, what do you mean? She said, you have 141 sources, and not one of them.
You didn't like apply quality in your
paper? No, that wasn't it. She said not one of your 140 sources disagrees with your theory. I said, well, why would I get people who disagree with me? She said, John, that's how we don't get anywhere. You got to find someone who disagrees with you and read their research. She said, you could work really hard for a decade building something, and when you get ready to pull it out and you find someone who disagrees and you read their work and you're like, oh my God, I've been wrong for 10 years.
Yeah, you can't just go to imright.com all the time.
Right. That was her point. you gotta have people who don't agree with you or think differently.
It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing
I
wrong
think that I don't know if you had to do any courses like this, but I know like now in a lot of my courses with business school, they'll make you do that. You have to go find places that disagree with you. You come up with something, you come up with an argument, and that's what your paper is on, is, convincing people of this argument. But half your sources have to be, you have to get half your information for the paper has to be essentially you disproving or talking about these things that go against your argument. And so, that helps.
That's why I like those assignments where they used to tell you, you've got to argue for and against this one thing. So like Larry, if I told you, Larry, I need you to come on and I want you to argue for gun control and then against gun control. So now what that does is that forces you to say, okay, if let's say I'm pro guns, right? But I have to do both. So now I have to go and research and find points to argue against gun control. And then when you're doing that, when you're researching something that's opposite to what you think, you start learning other things like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know that. I didn't know that there's been school shootings since the 1800s. And this is not a thing that started 20 years ago with Columbine, that this has been happening for a very long time. So I like those when you have to do both of those. But back to what we were talking about, because we've got a lot of great information. Larry's the only one that talked about what should happen with the police chief. And I'm normally not one to call for anybody. I don't believe in just firing everybody. People got bills to pay, but hey, when you do something wrong, you do something wrong. What do you feel like should happen, Hunter?
If you want to really mess with them, you should.
Not in the school though.
No.
Oh, nice. Oh my God. First of all, Hunter, you just insult. My grandfather was a janitor. What's wrong with janitors?
Nothing. It's just when you come from that high of a place back down to that with that low of a wage, it's going to
janitor is an essential job. Are we talking?
What? My grandfather made a lot of money as a janitor.
I more mean, you know how society. Look, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a janitor. I'm just saying, when you look at, I know you're messing with me too. You're trying to get in my head, but when you think about, the world we live in, people do oftentimes look down on janitors. And so if he's made the janitor at the police department where he was the chief, he's going to get shit on every day.
Yeah.
Now see, I
get fired. He probably would just fire me. He probably resigned at that point.
Hunter, go ahead, Larry.
I was going to say, just think of what he's doing, not only to himself and his reputation and his career. What about his family?
Right. Have we had a petting zoo today? We've had dogs barking. Now we've got cat meow. Is someone at a petting zoo? I thought everybody was home.
I'm home. I don't have any.
I'm home.
I'm home. I live in the city though.
I hear that. What is that?
I live in the middle, in the inner city. So skyscrapers, businesses, cars, sirens, parties, bars. I live in the heart of all that, and it's Friday. So
let's get a couple of shout outs.
I'd rather be here than at.
Let's get a couple shout outs. Gregory says everyone has a different circle. It's constantly changing. You become and turn into them when you hang out with them more. That's why I always say, if all of your friends look exactly like you, that's a problem. Your friends should all not look like you. Jay, Neon X Spindy Pie, I don't know what that is, but I think that's Jay, says the enemy of harmony is chaos. Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that. And he said something else about being a pescatarian, but we're just going to ignore that.
Ooh, I support it.
Okay, if I don't support any.
I mean, but also isn't the same true? Can't harmony also?
You have a problem with people restricting their appetite?
No, I just don't trust people who don't like bacon. That's all. I don't trust you. If you don't like bacon, I don't trust you.
It's not that we don't like it. We don't support it. Well,
Well,
It's
I
not that
actually
you
like
don't
I actually
it.
like that. I like that. I actually love vegetarians. I love vegans because that means more. You know what? When the apocalypse happens, and all
More bacon for you.
you know what? When the apocalypse happens and all the vegetables are dried out and there's nothing but pigs and cows running around, I want to see what the vegans and vegetarians do.
We're gonna grow
Look,
our food.
no, no, the soils. No, listen. You know what? The vegetarians and the vegans, they're going to be the first people to start eating people. They're going to be the first ones in line to eat other people. Watch. I'm telling you. Oh, man. Well,
Look,
this was a,
we're working towards a sustainable agriculture. So don't
listen,
worry.
I'm very sustainable. What you know what used to kill me when I was personal training people? I said this on the show, The Process. I'll be personal training someone, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm a vegan, John. Keone, you shouldn't be eating so much steak." I'm like, "Can you get that 50-pound dumbbell up first before you talk to me about what I should be eating? And how about you keep up when we're running before you tell me about what I should be eating? Like, I want to tell you what you should be eating."
No, there are the elitist vegans out there, and they're disgraceful. I apologize on their behalf.
No, you're fine. It's just with everything, there's always the wrong messenger. Some people are just the wrong.
There's bad vegans, like there's bad cops. There's bad vegans.
The wrong person to be talking
I
about it.
never, Larry, in all my life, I never thought I'd heard bad cop and bad vegan being put in the same sentence. Well, we accomplished it here on My Perspective Friday. Hey, it was we wanted to make sure we get a couple of personality in here and a couple laughs and go off script a little bit because we're talking about a heavy topic, but we didn't want to inundate you with an hour of sadness or and so we want to add a little humor without being disrespectful to what happened. So great show today, guys. And let's get a round of those final thoughts. I will start with you, Fook.
If you want to be the police, make sure that your life is last in your book. I guess. Okay. People first.
All right. Larry?
Well, my feeling is that based on the subject matter we're talking about, I believe you need more real police in schools. I believe that some teachers should be armed.
Oh, Jesus.
Trained. And I don't mean just giving them gun. I think.
I love that, Larry.
No.
You do?
No.
Thank you, Fook.
John's seen some stuff.
Teachers should be trained. They shouldn't be passive.
No.
No. I think everybody that carries a weapon, and I fully support it. I've got a permit myself. I think that people that carry a weapon, that they need to have the training for it. Not everybody has. Now, my family has permits. My wife, my daughter, I've had them down, give them some training. They've gone through classes, and that's what you should be doing.
Larry, Larry, I agree with you, and I disagree with you. Just because you have a driver's license doesn't mean you should be out here driving. Just because you're trained, just because you're trained doesn't mean you're a responsible person. Just because you're old enough to drink doesn't mean you're a responsible person. We gotta you just can't give everybody a gun and give them some training and a license and say, "Hey, we're good to go." Let me ask you. Hold on. If you look back, I was talking about there's been shootings for the last 200 years. They've got a story in 1902 where a teacher comes to school with his gun and shoots the wife that he thinks is cheating on him, who's another teacher, and the principal. So you just want to give this person a gun, and then when they're having a bad day, they come to work and take it out on people. It's called going postal for a reason. It's just if you give everybody a gun, everyone's getting shot. Here's the thing. And Larry, that's why I say I agree with you.
Everyone wants a gun. That's not even realistic.
The reason why I said I agree with you and I disagree with you, I had a friend who's no longer with us. He had a gun, which is fine. I'm not pro or against. I don't care. He has a gun. some people tend to think they're superheroes when you put that thing on their waist. And he would always say, yeah, I've got my concealed weapons license. Somebody come up on me. I said, bro, if someone comes to rob you and your wife, your job is to keep your wife safe and hand over your wallet. Because this ain't the Wild Wild West where he's going to stand across the street and get ready for you to draw. This person is already ready and willing to do whatever they can to get your money. The gun is drawn. And you think you're going to do like in some movie and pull your weapon out and have a shootout, and it doesn't work out that way.
People do think life's a movie. That's so funny.
He didn't listen. He was going to the movie theater. Someone went to rob him in an alley. He went to pull his gun and got shot 5 times.
Because he didn't give him the wallet?
Because he didn't give him well, he's got his gun now.
Oh, so it was just a shootout.
And I'm not saying that to say that as a story to deter people from getting guns. That was my story to everybody doesn't need to have a gun, whether they're trained or not. We got to have people to be self-aware. I did 20 years in the Army. I know how to handle a gun. I don't want one. You know why? Because sometimes I have issues with my anger. And I know when I get in certain situations, I know how to walk away. But now when I got my little buddy, am I always going to walk away? I don't know, so I choose not to have one. But if you have one, like Larry's saying, you got to be responsible. But
you got to have like a reason. You gotta have a reason to feel like your life is in harm.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when my dad taught me growing up about firearms. He was the first thing before he even let me see one in person, teach me anything about it. The first thing he's told me was exactly how dangerous they are. You know, to give you that realization that this is not a joke, that you need to be very responsible. And you do not point this thing at anything that you do not intend to kill. You have to have that mindset.
I love this comment by Michaela. Larry is a G. I love that. Larry
is.
That's a good thing, Larry. You're a G. You're a gangster. You're an OG. Larry's an OG. He's a gangster.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to.
I like what Hunter Dad said. Do not point this at nobody if you do not intend to kill.
Not even people. Anything at all.
No, I completely agree with that. On the other hand, if you do pull it, you better be ready to shoot somebody.
Yeah, and be ready to face the consequences if you didn't do it properly.
No, that's
the other thing my dad said. Until this bullet stops moving, you're responsible for where it goes.
That's correct. But let me ask you guys something. And you too, Fook. I didn't mean that to be sexist, but has anybody heard of any instance where a legal gun owner, a permit holder, has committed any of these crimes that we keep hearing about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah. You see it every day. If you're just specifically
the
talking
Uvalde
about,
guy bought the gun legally.
If you're
No, I said a permit holder.
You don't need a permit for a
I know, but we're talking about. I'm talking about people who have concealed carry permits, things like that.
Yes.
Who?
I had a friend in Fort Hood, Texas, who had a permit and concealed weapons license, and he went and shot his ex-girlfriend 17 times. I know we're talking about school shootings, but yes, people are people. This is what I said about.
Yeah, if someone's health record is full of behavioral hospitals and mental illness, why would you distribute a firearm to them?
Well, someone who's been, I'm pretty sure actually, if they've been admitted to a mental institution, you actually can't buy a firearm. I'm pretty sure that's in there somewhere.
That is correct.
But they don't take into until now. Actually, the new gun laws that the House just passed, it's got to move on to the Senate, does take that into account. It does take mental records into account, and if you've been red flagged by a therapist, there's a wait period until you get approved by a therapist saying that they're stable enough. You can't go and get a gun.
Well,
That's part of the new stuff that they're putting out.
Yeah, no,
but everything can be bought illegally.
Yeah, that's the other problem with like the gun control thing. It's like they're not really going anywhere.
Well, see, gun control doesn't go after the illegal guns either. But no, I completely support maybe strengthening the gun control laws. The red flag law, I think, is a great one if it's used properly.
Yeah.
Now, I just happen to be, pro gun. And I mean, I fully believe in trying to protect yourself and your family. I'm not saying going out looking for trouble, but you need to be ready for it.
I believe that if the police, border control, ICE could have firearms, civilians could have firearms.
I mean, that's the whole point of the Second Amendment in the first place, is that if the people in charge of the government have them, they also have the power to use them against you. And that's the whole reason we have the Second Amendment. So,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that to a certain extent. Yeah, like I said, I think you should be able to protect yourself. I don't believe that a regular civilian person should be able to be armed better than the police or the border patrol or whoever.
No.
Which, and right now they are, because they've taken all the good weapons away from the police. They can't get the military surplus stuff anymore.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, they they used to give the different police departments excess military equipment. Not the tanks, but the personnel carriers and some of the heavier weapons, which they can't do anymore.
Well, I feel like a lot of that also might be budget, because I know like Raleigh Police Department, they have those. They have like armored carriers and everything. They have robots for bomb situations. They have all that stuff. I think it may also be a big part of its budget. Well,
it could be, but I think they need bigger, heavier arms. They need to protect themselves. They need to be able to show they are more heavily armed than you are.
You all think firearm need more budget?
Budget.
I need more like money, investment. Is that what I heard?
Not like across the board. Maybe like departments that are sufficiently lacking at the moment need a bigger budget. But I think, like I said, Raleigh has the big stuff. They don't need a bigger budget. They look like they're doing just fine.
Well,
they don't need like GTA stuff.
Oh my God!
No, then I need to move to Raleigh because I like that. I like that.
Well, there's a lot of other things in Raleigh that you might not like. So
that could be.
It's a bit of a college town. I don't know that you'll enjoy it all that much.
Well, see, I like it down here in Florida too. So
we lost you, John.
Oh, am I back? I'm back.
Yeah, we got you.
Well, one thing I was hearing everything. My internet went out. We keep talking about, the police should have. It's not just budget. There were a lot of people inappropriately using these things. And that's why I keep talking about that broad swipe of the brush where people are just not doing the right things with stuff. So we always talk about just give everybody this and give everybody that. But we leave out the responsibility and accountability of what you're doing with these things.
The accountability. There is no accountability for anything anymore. And I completely agree with you, John. Even though I feel the police should be more heavily armed, they need to police themselves. And that's why you have police, or you have people in charge that are supposed to be taking care of these things.
That's the key word, supposed to. That's why you have in a lot of places these organizations that partner with the police, but they're they're like a civilian, not police force. I have a brain freeze, but you have these entities that do investigations and that work with the police and work with the community, because it's not just the police, it's every form of life. You're going to have people in places and positions, whether it's at work where you work, whether it's in government, whether it's in the police force, that are going to do the wrong thing or that are going to abuse their power. And like Larry was saying, it's up to every entity to make sure that they are, not to be cheeky, police yourselves, right? You got to police yourselves because, hey, you want the citizens to do the right thing.
You said earlier, limit your interactions as small as possible with the police.
Damn, I was hitting on my little quote I was going to say and then hit the button. I was going to say, I lost it now, Fook. Darn it.
It'll come back, maybe.
I was going to say, there you go. You want the citizens to act better. Well, in every aspect of life, you've got to lead by example.
Yes.
You got to lead by example. This was my Perspective Friday. Hope to see you guys, or we will see you guys next Friday. For Larry, Fook, Hunter, and myself, enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a great one.
See you guys.
See you.